The fever burned through Sophia Winters' body like wildfire as she stood on the dimly lit street corner of Fort Worth, Texas, in 1875, her once fine dress now threadbare against the autumn chill. At 25, she never imagined she'd end up here desperate, alone, and with only her body to sell to save the one person she had left in this world. The railroad had brought prosperity to Fort Worth, but it had also brought typhoid fever, which now ravaged the small home she shared with her younger brother. Just 17, Thomas was all the family Sophia had left after their parents died in the same epidemic 2 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on her that the same disease had returned to claim what remained of her family. Dr. Patterson had been clear. Without the proper medicine, Thomas wouldn't last another week. At $2 a bottle, the quinine was far beyond what Sophia could afford on a laundress's wages. The doctor had looked at her with pity when she'd asked if he could wait for payment, his sad headshake telling her everything she needed to know. So here she stood, in the part of town where respectable women didn't venture after dark, her stomach in knots and her heart hammering against her ribs. She had managed to avoid this fate for 2 years since their parents' passing, taking in washing, mending, anything honest to keep a roof over their heads. But honest work wouldn't save Thomas now. "Ain't seen you round these parts before," a woman in a red satin dress said, eyeing Sophia from beneath heavily powdered eyelids. "This here's my corner." Sophia swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, I didn't know, I'll move along." "Wait." The woman's face softened. "You ain't done this before, have you, honey?" Sophia shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "What's driven you here? Most girls don't choose this life unless they're desperate." "My brother," Sophia whispered. "He's sick. Typhoid, I need money for medicine." The woman sighed. "Lord have mercy. Well, I suppose there's enough business for both of us tonight. Name's Ruby." "Sophia." Word of advice, Sophia, don't look so scared. Men can smell fear and it'll either drive 'em away or attract the wrong kind. Before Sophia could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. A tall man on a chestnut stallion came into view, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. As he passed under the glow of a gas lamp, Sophia caught a glimpse of a weather-beaten face with sharp blue eyes and a strong jawline softened by a neatly trimmed beard. "That's Isaac Prescott," Ruby whispered. "Owns the biggest cattle ranch outside of town, not the type to frequent these parts. Wonder what brings him here tonight." Isaac Prescott drew his horse to a stop near the saloon across the street. He dismounted with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. As he tied his horse to the hitching post, his gaze drifted across the street and locked with Sophia's. For a moment, neither moved. Something in his steady gaze made Sophia feel exposed, as if he could see straight through to the desperation that had driven her here. She looked away first, her cheeks burning with shame. "You might try your luck there," Ruby suggested with a knowing smile. "A man like that could solve your problems for a week or more." The thought made Sophia's stomach turn, but Thomas's pale, sweat-soaked face flashed in her mind. For him, she could endure anything. Isaac watched the woman across the street from the corner of his eye as he secured his horse. Something about her didn't fit with the other painted ladies who worked this part of town. Her posture, the way she held herself, there was a dignity there, and a vulnerability that called to something deep inside him. He had come to town for supplies and to check on a business matter with the bank, not looking for company of any sort. At 32, Isaac had long ago accepted that his life would be devoted to building his ranch, the Rocking P, into something that would last. Women were a complication he didn't need, especially not the kind found in this part of Fort Worth. Yet he couldn't shake the image of those frightened eyes that had met his, or the way she'd looked away as if ashamed. Before he knew what he was doing, Isaac was crossing the street, his spurs jingling softly with each step. "Evening, ladies," he said, tipping his hat. The older woman, one he recognized from previous visits to town, gave him a practiced smile. "Well, if it ain't Mr. Prescott himself. What brings you to our humble corner of Fort Worth tonight?" "Just passing through," he replied, his eyes drifting to the younger woman. Up close, he could see that beneath the thin layer of rouge on her cheeks, she was pale and trembling slightly. "Haven't seen you before, miss." "She's new," the other woman answered for her. "Just starting out, ain't you, Sophia?" Isaac noted how the young woman flinched at those words, her eyes dropping to the ground. "Is that so?" he asked quietly. Sophia forced herself to look up to meet his gaze. If she was going to do this, she couldn't cower like a frightened child. "Yes," she managed, hating how her voice wavered. Something in her eyes, a mixture of desperation and determination, struck Isaac. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of men who were down to their last dollar but still fighting to survive. "Might I have a word with you, miss? Privately?" Ruby nudged Sophia with her elbow. "Go on, honey." "Mr. Prescott here is good for his word and his money." Sophia's heart pounded so hard she was certain he could hear it. She nodded and followed him a short distance away, out of earshot of Ruby, but still within the dim glow of the street lamps. "You don't belong here," Isaac said bluntly once they were alone. Anger flashed through her, momentarily overriding her fear. "You don't know anything about me or where I belong." A slight smile curved his lips, softening his stern features. "Fair enough. But I know desperation when I see it, and I'm wondering what's driven a woman like you to this corner tonight." For a moment, Sophia considered spinning a tale, something to make herself appear more worldly and less vulnerable. But she was too exhausted for pretense. "My brother is sick with typhoid fever. He needs medicine I can't afford," she said simply. "I've tried everything else." Isaac studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. He'd been fooled by sob stories before, but something told him this woman was telling the truth. "How much do you need?" Sophia blinked, caught off guard by the direct question. $2 for the medicine, and food to see us through until he's well enough for me to return to work." Isaac reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. Without hesitation, he counted out $10 and held it out to her. Sophia stared at the money, confused. "I don't understand." "It's yours, for the medicine and food." Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "And what do you expect in return?" "Nothing." "Nothing?" She almost laughed. "I wasn't born yesterday, Mr. Prescott. Men don't give something for nothing, especially not to women they find on street corners." Isaac sighed, pushing his hat back slightly on his head. "Look, Miss Winters. Sophia Winters." "Miss Winters, I've got more money than I need and no family to spend it on. Consider it a loan if your pride won't let you take it as a gift." Sophia's throat tightened with emotion. The money in his hand represented salvation for Thomas, but years of hardship had taught her to be wary of easy solutions. "Why would you help a stranger?" Isaac considered the question for a moment. "Because someone once helped me when I was at my lowest. I'm just passing on the favor." She hesitated, then slowly reached for the money. "I'll pay you back, every cent. I know you will." He closed her fingers around the bills. "Now go get that medicine for your brother." "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the money as if it might disappear. "The apothecary on Main Street should still be open," Isaac said. "Do you need an escort?" Sophia shook her head. "No, I can manage." She started to turn away, then looked back. "How will I find you? To repay the loan, I'm at the Rocking Pea Ranch about 10 miles northwest of town." "Anyone can point you in the right direction." He paused, then added, "But there's no hurry on that repayment. See to your brother first." With a nod of gratitude, Sophia hurried away, her steps lighter than they had been in weeks. Isaac watched her go, wondering what had possessed him to give money to a woman he'd just met. It wasn't like him to act on impulse, yet something about Sophia Winters had touched a part of him he'd thought long buried. As he turned back toward the saloon, Ruby approached him with a knowing smile. "That was mighty generous of you, Mr. Prescott." "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, his tone making it clear the subject was closed. Ruby just laughed. "Sure you don't." "Well, whatever you don't know about, it probably saved that girl from making a mistake she'd have regretted for the rest of her life." Isaac tipped his hat to her and continued on his way, but Ruby's words followed him. He'd given Sophia Winters money, but had he really saved her? Fort Worth was a harsh place for a woman alone, especially one with responsibilities. He doubted $10 would solve her problems for long. With a sigh, he pushed the thought away. He had his own concerns: a ranch to run, cattle to move before winter set in, and a banknote coming due. He couldn't afford to worry about every stray soul he encountered in town. Yet as he entered the saloon, he couldn't shake the image of those determined green eyes or the quiet dignity in her voice when she'd promised to repay him. Something told him he hadn't seen the last of Sophia Winters. Sophia clutched the bottle of quinine to her chest as she hurried through the darkened streets of Fort Worth. The apothecary had raised his eyebrows at a woman coming in so late, but the sight of ready money had quickly smoothed away any questions. With the remaining funds, she'd purchased bread, cheese, and a small cut of beef for broth. It wasn't much, but it would see them through the next few days until Thomas was stronger. As she approached their small rented room at the edge of town, guilt and gratitude warred within her. She had been ready to sell herself to save her brother, and instead, a stranger had shown her more kindness than she'd encountered since her parents' death. The room was dark when she entered, save for the faint glow of dying embers in the small stove. Thomas lay on the narrow bed against the wall, his breathing labored and his face flushed with fever. "Thomas," she called softly, lighting the stub of a candle by his bedside, "I've got the medicine." His eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. "Soph, where have you been?" "Never mind that now," she said, measuring out the bitter liquid according to Dr. Patterson's instructions. "Here, drink this." He grimaced at the taste but swallowed obediently. "How did you get it?" Sophia busied herself with stoking the fire, avoiding his gaze. "Someone helped us." "Who would help us?" "We don't know anyone in town with money to spare." "A stranger." "A good man." She couldn't bring herself to tell him how close she'd come to sacrificing her virtue for his sake. Thomas watched her with fevered eyes that seemed to see more than they should. "You didn't do anything foolish, did you, Soph?" She forced a smile. "Of course not. Now rest. The medicine will help, but you need sleep to recover." As she prepared the broth, Sophia's mind returned to Isaac Prescott. There had been no mistaking the wealth in his attire, the quality of his hat and coat, the fine leather of his boots. Yet there'd been nothing soft about him. His hands were calloused, his face weathered by sun and wind. A working rancher, not some idle rich man playing at cattle baron. Why had he helped her? Men like him didn't spare a glance for women like her unless they wanted something in return. Yet he'd asked for nothing, not even her gratitude. "I'll pay him back," she whispered to herself as she stirred the broth. "Every penny." What she didn't know was how she would earn that money. Her job at the laundry wouldn't be waiting for her. Mrs. Hollister had made it clear that if Sophia missed another day, she needn't bother coming back. With winter approaching, finding new work would be difficult. But those were worries for tomorrow. Tonight, Thomas had medicine, they had food, and for the first time in weeks, Sophia allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. 3 days later, the medicine had worked its magic. Thomas's fever had broken, and though still weak, he was well enough to sit up and take solid food. Sophia had spent the time caring for him, venturing out only to fetch water and to inquire about work at the establishments along Main Street. No one was hiring. She was returning from another fruitless search when she spotted a familiar chestnut stallion tied outside the general store. Her heart skipped a beat at the thought of encountering Isaac Prescott again. Part of her wanted to thank him properly. Another part was mortified at the memory of their meeting. Before she could decide whether to approach or avoid him, Isaac emerged from the store, his arms laden with packages. He stopped short when he saw her, genuine surprise crossing his face. "Miss Winters," he said with a nod, "Mr. Prescott." She clasped her hands in front of her to stop them from fidgeting. "I was hoping to see you again, to thank you properly." He glanced around the busy street. "How is your brother?" "Much improved, thanks to you. The medicine worked wonders." Relief softened his features. "I'm glad to hear it." He hesitated, then asked, "Have you eaten today?" The question caught her off guard. "I had some bread this morning." Isaac's expression darkened. "Come with me. There's a decent cafe around the corner." "Oh, I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition. I was about to get something myself." His tone made it clear he wouldn't take no for an answer. Sophia hesitated. Being seen in public with a man like Isaac Prescott would set tongues wagging, but her empty stomach made the decision for her. "Thank you. That's very kind." Isaac secured his packages to his saddle, then led the way to a small cafe tucked between a bookshop and a millinery. It was a respectable establishment, frequented by merchants and their wives, not the rough saloons that dominated other parts of town. Once seated at a corner table, Sophia became acutely aware of her shabby appearance. Her dress, though clean, was mended in several places, and her bonnet had seen better days. Next to Isaac's well-made clothing, she felt like a beggar at a banquet. "Order whatever you like," Isaac said, seemingly oblivious to her discomfort. "Their steak is particularly good." Sophia chose a modest stew while Isaac ordered steak and potatoes. As they waited for their food, an awkward silence fell between them. "I want you to know," she finally said, "that I intend to repay your loan. I've been looking for work, but with winter coming." She trailed off, not wanting to burden him with her troubles. Isaac studied her for a moment. "What skills do you have, Miss Winters?" "I can cook, clean, sew." "I worked as a laundress until recently." "And your brother?" "Thomas is 17. He was apprenticed to a carpenter before he fell ill." Pride crept into her voice. "He has a natural talent for woodworking." Their food arrived, and Sophia had to restrain herself from devouring the stew too quickly. It was the first hot meal she'd had in days that she hadn't prepared herself. As they ate, Isaac made a decision that surprised even him. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Winters." Sophia tensed, her spoon halting halfway to her mouth. "Not that kind of proposition," he added hastily, seeing her reaction. "A business arrangement. My housekeeper left 2 weeks ago to care for her ailing mother. I've been managing on my own, but poorly. I could use someone to cook and keep house at the ranch." "You're offering me employment?" "Yes. Room and board for you and your brother, plus wages. The boy can help around the ranch while he recovers his strength and perhaps continue his carpentry. There's always something that needs fixing." Sophia's mind raced. It seemed too perfect, too convenient. "Why would you do this? You don't know anything about me." Isaac set down his fork. "I know you were willing to sacrifice yourself for your brother's sake. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." Heat rose to Sophia's cheeks. I didn't. You don't owe me any explanations, Miss Winters. I'm offering you a job because I need help and you need work. It's as simple as that." But it wasn't simple at all, and they both knew it. A single woman living in a bachelor's home, even as a housekeeper, would raise eyebrows. Isaac seemed to read her thoughts. I have a small cabin about 100 yards from the main house. You and your brother would stay there. Your reputation would be safe. Sophia considered the offer. Living on a ranch miles from town would be isolating, but it would also mean security for her and Thomas. A roof over their heads, regular meals, and the chance for Thomas to continue learning a trade. When would you need us to start? A smile tugged at the corner of Isaac's mouth. Is that a yes? It's a consideration. I need to discuss it with Thomas. Of course. I'll be in town until tomorrow morning. If you decide to accept, I can take you both back to the ranch then. Sophia nodded, her mind already spinning with the implications of his offer. Thank you for the meal, Mr. Prescott. And for the opportunity. As they finished eating, Sophia couldn't help wondering if she was making another desperate decision she might come to regret. Yet something about Isaac Prescott's steady gaze and straightforward manner made her believe she could trust him. What she couldn't explain was the flutter in her chest when he smiled, or the warmth that spread through her when he insisted on walking her home. Those feelings were dangerous, far more dangerous than any proposition on a street corner. Thomas reacted to Isaac's offer exactly as Sophia had expected, with suspicion and pride. We don't need charity, he insisted, sitting up in bed. Though the fever had broken, he was still thin and pale. It's not charity, it's employment, Sophia countered, pacing the small room. And it's a chance for you to finish learning carpentry. Mr. Prescott says there's plenty of work for skilled hands on his ranch. Why would he hire someone he's never met? A sick boy and a woman with no experience as a ranch housekeeper. Sophia hesitated. We met a few days ago when I went looking for money for your medicine. Thomas's eyes narrowed. What aren't you telling me, Soph? With a sigh, she sat on the edge of the bed. The night you were so ill, I was desperate. I went to a part of town where women sell themselves. Horror dawned on her brother's face. Sophia, no, I didn't go through with it, she hurried to add. Mr. Prescott saw me there and somehow knew I didn't belong. He gave me money for your medicine and asked for nothing in return. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. And now he's offering us jobs. Yes, I think he genuinely needs the help, and she hesitated. I think he feels responsible for us now. I don't want to be anyone's responsibility, Thomas said stubbornly. Would you rather starve here in town? Winter's coming and we have no money for rent or coal. Sophia's voice rose with frustration. This is a chance for both of us, Thomas. A new start. Her brother looked away, jaw tight with the pride that was so like their father's. What if he expects things from you? Men like that always want something. I don't believe he's like that, Sophia said softly, but if I'm wrong, we'll leave, I promise. Thomas studied her face. You trust him? I do. The certainty in her voice surprised even her. After a long moment, Thomas nodded. Then we'll go. But I'll be watching him, Soph, and the first sign of trouble, we're gone. Relief washed over her. Thank you. Now get some rest. We leave tomorrow morning. That night, as Thomas slept, Sophia packed their meager belongings into a single carpet bag. Everything they owned in the world fit inside, with room to spare, a sad testament to how far they'd fallen since their parents' death. She thought of the life they were leaving behind. The cramped room, the endless drudgery of washing other people's clothes, the constant worry about money. Fort Worth had never felt like home. Just a place they'd ended up after fleeing the epidemic that had claimed their parents in Dallas. The Rocking Pea Ranch represented something she hadn't dared hope for in a long time, a future. Whether that future included Isaac Prescott beyond an employer-employee relationship, she couldn't say. But the thought of seeing him every day brought a warmth to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the small fire in the stove. You're being foolish, she whispered to herself. He's being kind, nothing more. Yet as she lay down beside her brother on the narrow bed, Sophia allowed herself a small, secret dream of blue eyes and a gentle smile that had offered help when she needed it most. The next morning dawned clear and cool, a perfect October day for traveling. Sophia had risen early to prepare, helping Thomas dress and making sure he ate a small breakfast to keep up his strength for the journey. At precisely 9 o'clock, a wagon pulled up outside their lodging house. Isaac sat at the reins, looking even more imposing in daylight than he had that night on the street corner. He wore a dark coat against the morning chill, and his hat was pulled low over his eyes. "Good morning," he called, jumping down from the wagon. "Are you ready to depart?" Sophia nodded, trying to ignore the curious stares of their neighbors. "Yes, we don't have much to bring." Isaac took the carpetbag from her hands, then helped Thomas down the steps and into the wagon with surprising gentleness. "The ride's about 2 hours. I've brought blankets to keep you warm." Once they were settled in the back of the wagon, cushioned by hay bales and wrapped in thick woolen blankets, Isaac climbed up to the driver's seat and clicked to the horses. The wagon lurched forward, carrying them away from Fort Worth and toward an uncertain future. The road northwest out of town quickly gave way to open country, with rolling hills covered in autumn-brown grass and scattered stands of oak and mesquite. Sophia had never ventured this far from Fort Worth before, and she found herself entranced by the vastness of the landscape. "It's beautiful," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Isaac glanced back at her. "Wait until you see it in spring when the wildflowers bloom. Bluebonnets cover these hills like a carpet." The thought that she might still be here in spring to see those bluebonnets filled Sophia with a strange mix of hope and trepidation. Thomas had been quiet since they left town, but now he stirred himself to ask, "How big is your ranch, Mr. Prescott?" "About 5,000 acres, Isaac replied. "Not the biggest in the county, but respectable. We run about 800 head of cattle and keep a small remuda of horses." "We?" Sophia asked. "My foreman, Hank Miller, and 4 cowboys who work year-round. During roundup and cattle drives, we hire additional hands." "And it's just you living in the main house?" she ventured. Isaac nodded. "Just me. My parents built the place 20 years ago when they drove the first herd up from San Antonio. They're both gone now, Pa 5 years back, Ma 2 years after that." There was a wealth of unspoken grief in those simple statements. Sophia understood it all too well. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said softly. "We lost our parents to typhoid 2 years ago." Isaac's shoulders tensed slightly, the only indication that her words had affected him. "It's a hard thing, losing family. Makes you value what's left all the more." He glanced back at Thomas. "You're lucky to have each other." As the wagon rolled on, Thomas gradually relaxed, even showing interest in his surroundings. When a jackrabbit darted across their path, he pointed it out with something approaching enthusiasm. Seeing her brother engage with the world again lifted Sophia's spirits immeasurably. They stopped briefly at noon to eat the lunch. Isaac had packed thick slices of ham between crusty bread, apples, and a jug of sweet cider. The simple meal tasted better than anything Sophia could remember eating in months. As they ate, Isaac outlined what would be expected of them at the ranch. "The main house isn't large, but it needs regular cleaning and upkeep. Meals for me and occasionally for Hank or any guests. Laundry once a week." "I can manage all that," Sophia assured him. "As for you, young man," he continued, turning to Thomas, "there's plenty of woodworking to be done once you're stronger. Fence posts need replacing, furniture needs mending, and I've been meaning to add a porch to the main house for years." Thomas straightened. "I know how to do all that, sir." My master in Dallas taught me well before we had to leave. Good. You'll start slow, don't want you relapsing, but there's no rush on any of it. By mid-afternoon, they crested a hill and the rocking P spread out before them. A two-story house of weathered timber stood on a gentle rise, surrounded by several outbuildings and corrals. A bunkhouse sat off to one side, and beyond it, the small cabin Isaac had mentioned. "There she is," Isaac said, a note of pride in his voice. "Not fancy, but she's mine, free and clear." "It's wonderful," Sophia breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. After the noise and filth of Fort Worth, the ranch seemed like paradise. As they approached, a tall, lanky man with a shock of gray hair emerged from the barn. He watched their arrival with undisguised curiosity. "That's Hank," Isaac explained. "Been with my family since before I was born. Runs things when I'm away." Hank met them at the yard, his weathered face breaking into a smile when Isaac introduced Sophia and Thomas. "About time we had a woman's touch around here again," he said, tipping his hat to Sophia. "Place ain't been the same since Mrs. Prescott passed." "I'll do my best," she promised. "And this young fella's going to help with the carpentry?" Hank asked, eyeing Thomas's thin frame doubtfully. "Once he's back to full strength," Isaac confirmed. "He's recovering from typhoid." Understanding dawned in Hank's eyes. "Well then, we'll fatten you up and get you healthy before putting you to work, son." The foreman's easy acceptance eased some of Sophia's anxiety. If Isaac's right-hand man had no objections to their presence, perhaps the other ranch hands wouldn't either. Isaac helped them settle into the cabin, which proved to be snug and clean with two small bedrooms, a living area with a stone fireplace, and a basic kitchen. It was plainly furnished but comfortable luxury compared to their room in Fort Worth. "I'll leave you to get settled," Isaac said, placing their carpetbag on a table. "Supper's at 6 in the main house. Nothing fancy, just beans and bacon. I'm afraid my cooking skills are limited." "We'll be there," Sophia assured him. "And tomorrow I'll take over the cooking." After Isaac left, she explored their new home, running her hands over the solid furniture and peering into cupboards stocked with basic supplies. Thomas watched her from a chair by the fire, exhausted from the journey but more alert than she'd seen him in weeks. "What do you think?" she asked him. "It's better than I expected," he admitted grudgingly. "And Prescott seems decent enough." "He is decent." Sophia smoothed a hand over the clean tablecloth. "We're lucky he found us when he did." Thomas's expression grew serious. "Soph, promise me something." "What is it? Don't fall in love with him." Sophia started, heat rushing to her face. "What? Why would you say such a thing?" "Because I know that look. It's the same one Ma used to get when she looked at Pa." Thomas leaned forward, his young face earnest. "Men like Prescott don't marry women like us. We're hired help, nothing more. Don't be ridiculous. I've only just met the man. Just promise me you'll be careful." "I couldn't bear to see you hurt." Sophia crossed the room and knelt beside her brother's chair. "You worry too much, but if it will make you feel better, I promise to keep my heart guarded." Thomas seemed satisfied with that, but as Sophia busied herself unpacking their few belongings, she couldn't help wondering if she'd made a promise she couldn't keep. That evening, supper in the main house was a simple but pleasant affair. Isaac's home revealed much about the man, practical but comfortable, with good quality furnishings that had clearly been chosen for durability rather than fashion. Books lined shelves in the parlor, and a desk in the corner held papers and ledgers, evidence of the business side of ranching. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, but showed signs of bachelor living: mismatched plates, utensils stored haphazardly, and a distinct lack of the homey touches a woman might add. "This kitchen is wonderful," Sophia commented as she helped clear the plates after their meal. "I'll have no trouble cooking here." Isaac looked pleased. My mother designed it. She loved to cook and wanted plenty of space. She must have been a remarkable woman. She was. A shadow crossed his face. She would have liked you, I think. The simple statement caught Sophia off guard, warming her from the inside out. That's very kind of you to say. Thomas, who had been quiet throughout the meal, suppressed a yawn. You should get some rest, Sophia told him. It's been a long day. I'll walk you both back to the cabin, Isaac offered, reaching for his hat. Outside, the October night was clear and cold, with stars blazing overhead in a way they never did in town. Sophia gasped at the sight. I've never seen so many stars, she said, tilting her head back. One of the benefits of country living, Isaac replied, his voice soft in the darkness. No coal smoke or gas lamps to dim the view. At the cabin door, he bid them good night, his eyes lingering on Sophia's face for a moment before he turned to go. Sleep well. Tomorrow's a new beginning. As she watched him walk away, silhouetted against the starlit sky, Sophia felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the cold night air. Thomas's warning echoed in her mind, but she pushed it aside. There was no harm in admiration, she told herself. It didn't mean she was falling in love. But later, as she lay in her new bed listening to Thomas's steady breathing from the other room, Sophia admitted to herself that her heart was already treading dangerous ground. In the span of just a few days, Isaac Prescott had changed from stranger to savior to employer. What might he become given time? With that unsettling thought, she drifted into sleep, dreaming of blue eyes and stars too numerous to count. The next few weeks at the Rocking P fell into a comfortable rhythm. Sophia took to her duties with enthusiasm, grateful for work that didn't leave her hands raw and aching as laundry had. She cleaned the main house from top to bottom, organized the kitchen to her liking, and prepared meals that brought appreciative comments from Isaac and occasionally Hank, who joined them for supper once a week. Thomas grew stronger daily, the good food and clean air working miracles on his health. He started helping with small carpentry projects around the ranch, fixing a broken chair, rebuilding a chicken coop, crafting new shelves for the kitchen. His natural talent impressed not only Isaac, but the other ranch hands as well. November brought cooler weather and the first frost, turning the prairie grass silver in the mornings. Sophia began baking bread daily, filling the main house with the homey scent that reminded Isaac of his childhood. That smells like heaven, he commented one morning, coming in from checking the cattle in the north pasture. Sophia smiled as she turned the golden loaf out of its pan. My mother taught me. She said good bread was the foundation of any meal. She was right. Isaac removed his hat and coat, hanging them by the door. My mother used to say the same thing. These small moments of connection had become increasingly common between them. Shared memories, similar values, mutual respect for hard work, they discovered they had more in common than their different stations in life might suggest. Isaac found himself lingering in the house more often, finding excuses to be inside, when previously he would have been out with the cattle or checking fences. He told himself it was the approaching winter that kept him close to home, but he knew it was Sophia's presence that drew him. There was something about the way she moved through his house, bringing warmth and life to rooms that had felt empty for years. The way she hummed softly while working, unaware she was doing it. The gentle kindness she showed to everyone, from Hank down to the youngest ranch hand. For her part, Sophia tried to maintain a professional distance, mindful of Thomas's warning and her own vulnerable position. But it was difficult when Isaac would bring her wildflowers he'd found while riding the range, or when he'd sit in the kitchen while she cooked, telling her stories about growing up on the ranch. One evening in late November, As the first snow flurries danced outside the windows, Isaac found Sophia in the parlor after supper, mending one of his shirts by lamplight. Thomas had already returned to the cabin, tired from a day spent helping build a new feed trough for the horses. "You don't have to do that tonight," Isaac said, taking a seat across from her. "It can wait until tomorrow." Sophia looked up, her fingers still working the needle skillfully. "I don't mind. It's peaceful sitting here by the fire." Isaac watched her work, mesmerized by the graceful movement of her hands. "You've changed this house, Sophia." She paused, startled by his use of her first name. Until now, he'd always called her Miss Winters, maintaining the formality of their employer-employee relationship. "Have I?" she asked softly. "You know you have. It hasn't felt like a home since my mother died. Now it does." The simple statement hung in the air between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Sophia resumed her sewing, unsure how to respond. "I've been thinking," Isaac continued when she remained silent. "Christmas is coming in a few weeks. I'd like to have a proper celebration this year." "That would be lovely. I could prepare a special dinner. No, I mean more than that. A tree, decorations, maybe even invite some of the neighboring ranchers and their families." He leaned forward, his expression eager. "The kind of Christmas my parents used to host before they passed." Sophia set down her sewing. "That's a wonderful idea. Thomas and I haven't had a real Christmas since our parents died." "Then it's settled. We'll make it special for all of us." Isaac stood, moving to stoke the fire. "There's a stand of pine trees in the south pasture where we can find a good one for the parlor." As he turned back to face her, a log shifted in the fireplace, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. The flickering light cast his features in a warm glow, highlighting the strong line of his jaw and the kindness in his eyes. Sophia felt a pull toward him that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the man himself, his integrity, his quiet strength, the gentle way he treated those under his care. "I should go," she said abruptly, gathering her mending. "Thomas will worry if I'm too late." Isaac nodded, though disappointment flashed briefly in his eyes. "Of course, I'll walk you back." "There's no need. It's just across the yard. It's snowing and it's dark. I'll walk you." His tone brooked no argument, and truthfully, Sophia didn't want to refuse. These brief moments alone with Isaac had become precious to her, despite her efforts to guard her heart. Outside, the snow was falling more heavily, transforming the ranch into a wonderland of white. Their boots crunched on the newly fallen snow as they crossed the yard to the cabin. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Isaac said, looking up at the swirling flakes. "Yes," Sophia agreed, but she was looking at him rather than the snow. At the cabin door they paused, neither quite ready to say goodnight. The air between them seemed charged with possibility. "Thank you for the idea about Christmas," Sophia said finally, breaking the silence. "It will be good for Thomas to have something to look forward to." "And you?" Isaac asked, his voice low. "What do you look forward to, Sophia?" The question caught her off guard. What did she look forward to? For so long, her life had been about survival, about getting through each day with enough food and shelter for herself and Thomas. The luxury of anticipation, of hope for something beyond basic needs, was unfamiliar. "I look forward to tomorrow," she answered honestly. "To waking up here with work that satisfies and people who—" She hesitated. "People who what?" Isaac prompted gently. "People who care," she finished, unable to say what she truly felt, that it was his presence, his approval, his smile that she looked forward to most. Isaac's gaze softened. "I do care, Sophia. More than I should, perhaps." Before she could respond, the cabin door opened, revealing Thomas in his nightshirt, a concerned frown on his face. "Soph, is everything all right?" The moment shattered like thin ice under too much weight. Sophia stepped back, creating distance between herself and Isaac. "Everything's fine. Mr. Prescott was just walking me home." Isaac nodded to Thomas, his face once again the composed mask of an employer. "Good night, Miss Winters, Thomas." As he walked away, shoulders hunched against the falling snow, Sophia felt as though something precious had slipped through her fingers before she'd fully grasped it. "You're breaking your promise," Thomas said quietly once they were inside. Sophia busied herself removing her coat and boots. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. I see the way you look at him, Soph, and the way he looks at you." She turned to face her brother, surprised to find not accusation in his expression but concern. "Is it so wrong to care for him?" Thomas sighed, suddenly seeming older than his 17 years. "No, it's not wrong, but it might be unwise. What happens if it doesn't work out? We have nowhere else to go." "I know," Sophia admitted. "Believe me, I've thought of that, but I can't help how I feel." Thomas crossed the room and hugged his sister, a rare display of affection from the increasingly independent young man. "Just be careful, Soph. That's all I ask." She returned the embrace, grateful for his understanding if not his caution. "I will be. Now off to bed with you." Morning comes early on a ranch, snow or no snow. Later, as she lay awake listening to the soft patter of snowflakes against the window, Sophia wondered what Isaac had meant by caring more than he should. Was it merely the inappropriate interest of an employer in his housekeeper? Or something deeper, something that might bridge the gap between their stations? The practical part of her knew Thomas was right to be concerned. Their security depended on Isaac's goodwill. Yet her heart whispered that what was growing between them was genuine, something rare and precious that might be worth the risk. Snow continued to fall through the night, blanketing the ranch in a foot of pristine white by morning. The cattle needed extra feeding to compensate for the covered grass, and all hands were busy breaking ice on water troughs and ensuring the animals were protected from the worst of the cold. Despite the additional work, there was a festive air about the ranch. The first big snow of the season often brought that feeling, a reminder that Christmas was approaching and a new year not far behind. Sophia spent the morning baking, knowing the men would need hearty food after working in the cold. The kitchen windows steamed up as pots of stew simmered on the stove and loaves of bread baked in the oven. Around noon, Isaac stamped the snow from his boots on the back porch and entered the kitchen, bringing a blast of cold air with him. "Something smells wonderful," he said, rubbing his gloved hands together. Sophia smiled, trying to ignore the way her heart leapt at the sight of him. "Beef stew and fresh bread. I thought the men might appreciate something hot for lunch. They'll be grateful. It's bitter out there." He removed his coat and gloves, hanging them by the door. "Hank's bringing them in now." The kitchen soon filled with ranch hands, their faces red from cold but spirits high as they filled bowls with steaming stew and cut thick slices of bread. Sophia moved among them, pouring coffee and making sure everyone had enough to eat. She noticed Isaac watching her, a thoughtful expression on his face. When their eyes met across the crowded kitchen, something passed between them, an acknowledgement of the tension from the night before, and perhaps a silent agreement to proceed with caution. After lunch, as the men returned to their work, Isaac lingered behind. "I'm riding out to the Henderson place this afternoon," he said. "Laura Henderson is a widow with 2 young children. I thought perhaps you might accompany me." Sophia looked up from the dishes she was washing. "Oh, why would you need me along? The Hendersons don't have much." "Jim died last winter, leaving Laura to run their small ranch alone." Isaac leaned against the doorframe. "I help out when I can, but I thought she might appreciate another woman to talk to, and I'd like you to see more of the area than just the rocking pea." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Sophia deeply. Isaac wasn't just thinking of the widow's comfort, but of hers as well, recognizing that she might be feeling isolated on the ranch. "I'd like that," she said. "But what about supper preparations? We won't be gone long. And I'm sure the men would survive one night of my cooking if necessary." Sophia laughed. "Based on what you've told me of your cooking skills, I'm not sure they would. Let me prepare something that can be easily warmed later." An hour later, with a pot of stew simmering gently on the back of the stove and Thomas informed of her outing, Sophia found herself seated beside Isaac in a small sleigh, a lap robe tucked around them both for warmth. The snow had stopped falling, and the afternoon sun turned the landscape into a dazzling expanse of white, broken only by stands of bare trees and the occasional fence line. The sleigh runners made a soft shushing sound as they glided across the snow, and the horse's breath formed clouds in the crisp air. "It's beautiful," Sophia said, gazing at the pristine countryside. "I've never seen anything like it." Isaac smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Winter has its own kind of beauty out here, harsh but clean, everything stripped down to essentials." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the connection between them growing without the need for words. Sophia was acutely aware of Isaac's solid presence beside her, of the way his arm occasionally brushed hers as he guided the horses. "Tell me about your life before Fort Worth," Isaac said eventually. "You mentioned your parents died in Dallas." Sophia nodded, memories both sweet and painful surfacing. "My father was a school teacher. We lived comfortably, not wealthy, but we never wanted for anything essential. Mother taught me to cook and sew and manage a household, expecting I'd marry someday and need those skills." "And then typhoid came," Isaac guessed softly. "Yes, it swept through Dallas 2 summers ago. My parents both fell ill within days of each other. Thomas and I nursed them, but—" She trailed off, the memory of those desperate days still raw. "Afterward, we couldn't afford to keep our home. Thomas's carpentry master had died in the same epidemic, so there was nothing keeping us in Dallas. We heard Fort Worth was growing, that there might be opportunities there. But it didn't work out that way." Sophia sighed. "No. The laundry work was the best I could find, and it barely kept a roof over our heads. Then, when Thomas fell ill—" Isaac's hand covered hers where it rested on the lap robe. "I'm glad I found you that night." The simple touch and the sincerity in his voice warmed Sophia more than the heavy blanket covering their laps. "So am I. What about you?" she asked after a moment. "You mentioned your parents, but have you always lived at the Rocking P?" Isaac nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon as he spoke. "Born and raised there. My father came to Texas after the war between the states. He'd fought for the Union, which didn't make him popular around these parts, but he was determined to build something of his own." "And your mother?" A smile softened his features. "She was the daughter of a rancher near San Antonio. They met when my father went south to buy his first herd. According to family legend, she fell in love with him the moment she saw him break a wild Mustang that none of her father's cowboys could tame." "How romantic," Sophia said with a smile. "My father always said the taming of that horse was nothing compared to the challenge of winning her father's approval." Isaac chuckled at the memory. "Apparently, Grandfather Williams was not pleased about his only daughter marrying a Yankee. But they married anyway. They did. And built the Rocking P together, through droughts and blizzards and everything else Texas could throw at them." Pride rang in his voice. "My father always said Mother was the backbone of the ranch, that he might supply the muscle, but she supplied the heart." The parallels to their own situation weren't lost on Sophia. Like Isaac's parents, they came from different worlds, he the established rancher, she the destitute woman he'd found on a street corner. But unlike that romantic tale, Their story had no guarantee of a happy ending. As if sensing her thoughts, Isaac squeezed her hand gently. Not every love story follows the same path, Sophia. The directness of his statement took her breath away. Before she could formulate a response, he nodded ahead. There's the Henderson place. The small ranch came into view, a modest house with a barn and a few outbuildings, all well maintained despite their age. Smoke curled from the chimney, and as they approached, the front door opened to reveal a woman in her 30s with a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. "Isaac Prescott, is that you?" she called, shielding her eyes against the sun's glare on the snow. "It's me, Laura," Isaac replied, bringing the sleigh to a halt. "I've brought a friend to meet you, Sophia Winters, my new housekeeper." Laura Henderson's welcoming smile put Sophia instantly at ease. The widow ushered them inside, where two children, a boy of about 8 and a girl perhaps 5, were playing quietly by the fire. The small house was neat but sparsely furnished, with patches on the curtains and worn spots on the rug. Yet there was a feeling of home about the place, children's drawings tacked to the walls, the scent of pine boughs arranged on the mantel, a cat dozing in a patch of sunlight. "Children, say hello to Mr. Prescott and Miss Winters," Laura instructed. The children approached shyly, the boy extending his hand with grave courtesy while the little girl half hid behind her brother. "Michael and Emma, isn't it?" Isaac said, shaking the boy's hand solemnly. "You've grown since I saw you last, young man." Michael straightened proudly. "Yes, sir. Ma says I'm near tall as my pa was at my age." A shadow crossed Laura's face at the mention of her late husband, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Michael's been the man of the house since Jim passed. Don't know what I'd do without him." Over cups of weak coffee, Sophia noted the widow was clearly rationing her supplies. They talked of ranch matters, the upcoming Christmas season, and news from the nearest town. Isaac had brought supplies: flour, sugar, coffee, and a small ham which Laura accepted with quiet dignity and genuine gratitude. "And I've brought something else," Isaac said, reaching into his coat pocket. He withdrew a small cloth pouch and handed it to Laura. "The medicine you mentioned Emma needed for her cough." Laura's eyes filled with tears. "Isaac, I can't accept—" "You can and you will," he interrupted gently. "Jim would never forgive me if I let his family suffer when I could help." The widow ducked her head, accepting the gift with a murmured thank you. Sophia watched the exchange with new understanding. This was the man who had offered help to a desperate stranger on a Fort Worth Street corner, a man whose generosity wasn't a momentary impulse, but a fundamental part of his character. As the women prepared a simple supper, Laura spoke quietly to Sophia. "Isaac Prescott is the finest man in these parts, has been since before Jim died." "He's been very kind to my brother and me," Sophia agreed. Laura glanced toward the main room, where Isaac was showing Michael how to whittle a small wooden horse. "Jim always said if anything happened to him, Isaac would make sure we were taken care of, and he has." She paused, studying Sophia's face. "He looks at you differently than he looks at most folks." Heat rose to Sophia's cheeks. "We're just employer and employee." Laura's knowing smile suggested she wasn't convinced. "If you say so. But I haven't seen that light in his eyes since before his mother passed." Before Sophia could respond, Emma came running into the kitchen, asking for help with her doll's dress. The moment for confidences passed, but Laura's words lingered in Sophia's mind. The ride back to the Rocking P was quieter, both Sophia and Isaac lost in their own thoughts. The sun was setting, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. The temperature dropped with the sun, and Sophia found herself moving closer to Isaac for warmth. "You're very good with Laura and her children," she said eventually, breaking the comfortable silence. They clearly think the world of you. Isaac shrugged, seemingly embarrassed by the praise. Jim Henderson was a good man. When he died, it felt natural to look out for his family. Just as it felt natural to help a desperate woman and her sick brother, he glanced at her, his expression unreadable in the fading light. That was different. How so? Isaac was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. With Laura, I'm fulfilling an obligation to an old friend. With you, he hesitated. With you, I felt something from the first moment I saw you, something I can't explain. The confession hung in the air between them, more intimate than any touch. Sophia's heart raced, her carefully constructed defenses crumbling in the face of his honesty. I felt it too, she admitted softly. Even then, in those terrible circumstances, I trusted you. I don't know why. Isaac's hand found hers beneath the lap robe, his fingers intertwining with hers. Perhaps some connections can't be explained. They just are. They rode the rest of the way in silence, hands linked, each acutely aware of having crossed some invisible threshold. When they arrived back at the ranch, the main house windows glowed with lamplight, and smoke curled from the chimney of the cabin where Thomas would be waiting. Isaac helped Sophia down from the sleigh, his hands lingering at her waist. In the shadowy yard, with snowflakes beginning to fall again, they stood close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. "Sophia," he began, his voice low and serious, "I need you to know that boss." Hank's voice cut through the moment as the foreman approached from the direction of the barn. "Glad you're back. We've got trouble with the north herd. Wolves got one of the calves and the rest are spooked." Isaac stepped back from Sophia, his expression shifting from the intimate vulnerability of moments before to the focused authority of the ranch owner. "I'll be right there. Miss Winters, thank you for accompanying me today." The sudden formality was like a dash of cold water. "Of course, Mr. Prescott. Good night." As Sophia walked to the cabin, she tried to make sense of the tumultuous emotions of the day. Isaac clearly cared for her, perhaps even loved her, though neither had spoken that word. But the interruption had been a stark reminder of the realities that stood between them: his responsibilities as ranch owner, her position as his employee, the difference in their stations that might not matter to Isaac, but would certainly matter to others. Thomas was waiting inside, a book open on his lap. He took one look at her face and sighed. "It's too late, isn't it? You're already in love with him." Sophia couldn't deny it any longer, not even to herself. "Yes," she whispered. "I am." Thomas closed his book. "Then I hope, for both our sakes, that he's worthy of it." "He is," Sophia said with conviction. "Today I saw the man he truly is: kind, generous, honorable." "And what does he feel for you?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did Isaac Prescott feel for the woman he'd rescued from the streets of Fort Worth? Was it love, pity, a sense of responsibility, or something else entirely? "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "Not with certainty, but I think he might love me too." Thomas studied his sister's face. "Then why do you look so troubled?" "Because love isn't always enough, Thomas. There's the difference in our positions, what others might say. Since when have you cared what others say?" Thomas interrupted. "Since our security depends on Isaac's standing in the community," she replied. "If loving me damages his reputation, costs him the respect of his peers, then he's not the man you think he is." Sophia shook her head. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." Thomas stood, suddenly looking every inch their father's son. "If he loves you, truly loves you, none of that will matter to him. And if it does, then he doesn't deserve you." With that simple wisdom, Thomas retired to his room, leaving Sophia to ponder whether real love really could overcome the obstacles that stood between her and Isaac. The next morning dawned clear and bitterly cold. Sophia arrived at the main house earlier than usual, hoping to catch Isaac before he left for his morning rounds. But Hank informed her that the boss had ridden out before dawn to check on the north herd after the wolf attack. Said not to expect him back till supper time at the earliest, the foreman added. Might have to spend the night out at the line cabin if the weather turns. Disappointment settled in Sophia's chest, but she masked it with a nod. I'll keep something warm for him, just in case. The day stretched endlessly as Sophia went about her duties, her mind constantly returning to the unfinished conversation in the yard. What had Isaac been about to say before Hank interrupted them? By afternoon, snow was falling again, the wind driving it sideways and creating drifts against the buildings. Sophia worried about Isaac out in such weather, exposed to the elements with only the small line cabin for shelter if he couldn't make it back. Thomas arrived at the main house around 4, stamping snow from his boots. Hank says a real blizzard's coming. He's bringing the hands in early and doubling the watch on the herds. Sophia looked out at the darkening sky. Is Isaac still out there? No one's seen him since morning. Thomas studied his sister's anxious face. He knows this land better than anyone, Soph. He'll be fine. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Logically, she knew Thomas was right. Isaac had survived countless Texas winters. He wouldn't take foolish risks. Yet she couldn't shake the fear that gripped her heart. By supper time, the storm had intensified. Wind howled around the eaves of the house, and snow piled against the windows. Hank and the ranch hands ate quickly and returned to the bunkhouse, leaving Sophia and Thomas alone in the main house. We should go back to the cabin, Thomas suggested, eyeing the worsening weather. Sophia shook her head. You go. I want to stay in case Isaac returns. Sophia, please, Thomas. I need to know he's safe. Her brother sighed, recognizing the futility of arguing. At least let me bring your night clothes and a change for morning. You shouldn't have to go out in this again tonight. After Thomas left, bundled against the storm for the short trek to their cabin, Sophia built up the fire in the parlor and settled into a chair with her mending. The familiar rhythm of needle and thread helped calm her racing thoughts, though her ears remained alert for any sound that might indicate Isaac's return. Hours passed. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 10, then 11. Thomas had returned with her things, and, seeing her determination to wait, had reluctantly gone back to the cabin alone. Just as the clock chimed midnight, Sophia heard the muffled sound of hoofbeats, followed by the creak of the barn door. She was on her feet in an instant, hurrying to the kitchen to put water on for coffee, knowing Isaac would be half frozen after riding in such conditions. The back door opened a few minutes later, bringing a gust of cold air and the unmistakable presence of Isaac Prescott. He stood in the doorway, snow covering his coat and hat, his face reddened from the cold. Sophia, surprise and something else pleasure warmed his voice. What are you doing up at this hour? Waiting for you, she answered simply, taking his coat and hat. I was worried. Isaac's expression softened as he stomped snow from his boots. You shouldn't have. I've ridden through worse. Nevertheless, I worried. She gestured to a chair by the stove. Sit. I've water heating for coffee and there's stew I can warm. He sank gratefully into the chair, extending his hands toward the stove's warmth. Coffee would be heaven right now, but don't trouble yourself with food. I ate at the line cabin before starting back. As Sophia prepared the coffee, she was acutely aware of Isaac watching her, his gaze following her movements around the kitchen. You didn't have to wait up, he said again. She turned to face him, deciding honesty was the only path forward. Yes, I did. Because last night, before Hank interrupted us, you were about to say something important. I've been thinking about it all day, wondering what it might have been. Isaac's eyes held hers, the weariness in them giving way to something more intense. I was going to say that I need you to know how I feel about you. That what started as an act of charity has become something else entirely. That I can't imagine this house my life without you in it." Sophia's heart thundered in her chest. "Isaac, let me finish." He rose from the chair and crossed to where she stood. "I know the circumstances of our meeting weren't conventional. I know there are those who would say I'm taking advantage of your position, or that you're beneath my station. I don't give a damn about any of that." He took her hands in his touch gentle despite the roughness of his skin. "I love you, Sophia Winters. I think I've loved you since that first night in Fort Worth when you looked at me with such courage despite your circumstances." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes, blurring her vision. "I love you too," she whispered, "but I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of what loving me might cost you. Your standing in the community, the respect of your peers, none of that matters." Isaac's hands tightened on hers. "The only thing that matters is how we feel about each other. Everything else is just noise." The certainty in his voice swept away the last of Sophia's doubts. This was a man who knew his own mind, who wouldn't be swayed by the opinions of others. A man who truly saw her not as a charity case or a convenient housekeeper, but as a woman worthy of love. "What about Thomas?" she asked, one final concern nagging at her. Isaac smiled. "I admire your brother's talent and his protective nature. I'd be proud to have him as family." "Family," Sophia repeated, the word filling her with warmth. "Is that what you're proposing, Isaac Prescott?" In answer, he released her hands only to reach into his pocket. From it, he withdrew a small velvet box. "I rode into town 3 days ago to get this. Had to swear the jeweler to secrecy, wanted it to be a surprise for Christmas." He opened the box to reveal a ring, a simple gold band set with a single diamond that caught the lamplight and scattered it like stars. "It was my mother's," Isaac explained. "Pa gave it to me before he died, said to save it for the woman who made me feel the way Ma made him feel." He took a deep breath. "Sophia Winters, will you marry me?" Through her tears, Sophia smiled. "Yes, yes, I will marry you, Isaac Prescott." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms. Their first kiss was gentle, a tender promise of the life they would build together. When they finally parted, both were smiling, their faces flushed with more than just the stove's heat. "I should go tell Thomas," Sophia said, though she made no move to leave Isaac's embrace. "Tomorrow is soon enough," he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "The storm's still raging, and I've only just found my way home." Home. The word had never held such meaning for Sophia as it did in that moment. Standing in Isaac's kitchen, their kitchen, with his mother's ring on her finger, and his love surrounding her like a shield against all the hardships she'd endured. "Yes," she agreed, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "You're home now." Christmas at the Rocking Pea that year was everything Isaac had promised and more. The parlor boasted a magnificent pine tree decorated with paper stars Sophia had made, strung cranberries, and small carved wooden ornaments that Thomas had crafted. Holly boughs adorned the mantelpiece, and candles glowed in every window. News of their engagement had spread quickly through the county. Some eyebrows were raised at the rancher's choice of bride, a woman of unknown background, working as his housekeeper, but Isaac's standing in the community was such that few dared criticize openly. Laura Henderson and her children were among the guests at the Christmas gathering, as were several neighboring ranchers and their families. Hank had scrubbed up impressively for the occasion, his usually weathered face shining from soap and goodwill. Thomas, initially wary of the engagement despite his brave words about love conquering all, had come around completely when he realized Isaac intended to support his carpentry aspirations. The two had spent hours discussing plans for a workshop where Thomas could develop his skills and eventually take on apprentices of his own. As Sophia moved among their guests, serving mulled cider and the Christmas cookies she'd baked to her mother's recipe, she caught Isaac watching her, his eyes filled with pride and love. She touched the ring on her finger, still marveling at the turn her life had taken in such a short time. From desperate straits in Fort Worth to mistress of the Rocking Pea Ranch, it was the kind of transformation that happened in fairy tales, not in real life. Yet here she was, surrounded by warmth and light and the promise of a future brighter than any she could have imagined. Later, after the guests had departed and Thomas had retired to the cabin, now his alone, as Sophia had moved into the main house in a separate bedroom until the wedding, Isaac found her in the parlor, gazing at the Christmas tree. "Happy?" he asked, slipping an arm around her waist. Sophia leaned into him, savoring his solid presence. "More than I ever thought possible. I have one more gift for you," Isaac said, leading her to the sofa. Once seated, he withdrew an envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. "Open it." Inside, Sophia found a document bearing the official seal of the county clerk. As she read it, tears filled her eyes. "You paid off the mortgage on our family home in Dallas," she whispered. "But why? We can't live there, no, but we can rent it out," Isaac explained. "The income will be yours and Thomas's, held in trust. Or if you prefer, we can sell it. Either way, it's a legacy from your parents that was nearly lost. I wanted to restore it to you." Sophia stared at the document, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift. It wasn't just property Isaac had given her, but a piece of her past tangible proof that her parents had existed, had built something of value that could now benefit their children. "I don't know what to say," she managed finally. Isaac took her hand. "Say you'll marry me on New Year's Day." "I don't want to wait any longer to make you my wife." "So soon?" Sophia asked, though her heart leapt at the idea. "What about preparations? Laura Henderson has offered to help, and Hank's wife in town said she'd come out to assist with whatever needs doing." "Unless you want to wait, no," Sophia interrupted. "New Year's Day is perfect. A new year, a new life together." The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a flurry of preparations. Sophia, with Laura's help, altered one of Mrs. Prescott's old dresses for the ceremony, a gown of ivory silk that fit her as if it had been made for her. Thomas, determined to contribute to his sister's happiness, crafted a beautiful wooden jewelry box as a wedding gift, inlaid with different woods to create a pattern of roses on the lid. Isaac, meanwhile, oversaw renovations to the master bedroom, which had remained largely untouched since his mother's death. Fresh paint, new curtains, and a handsome quilt from one of the neighboring ranchers' wives transformed the space into a fitting chamber for the new Mrs. Prescott. The wedding itself was simple but meaningful. Judge Harrison rode out from town to perform the ceremony in the Rocking Pea parlor, with Thomas giving his sister away and Hank serving as best man. Laura Henderson stood as matron of honor, with little Emma as an impromptu flower girl, scattering dried rose petals from Mrs. Prescott's garden that Sophia had saved the previous summer. As Sophia spoke her vows, her voice clear and steady, she glanced at Thomas and saw tears in his eyes, not of sorrow or worry, but of joy. Her brother had come to see what she had known from the start. Isaac Prescott was a good man, one who would cherish her always. The celebration afterward was lively, with fiddle music provided by one of the ranch hands and dancing that continued well into the evening. When the last guest had departed and Thomas had retired to his cabin, now permanently his own, Isaac led his bride upstairs to the room that would be theirs for the rest of their lives. "Welcome home, Mrs. Prescott," he said, closing the door behind them. Sophia turned in a slow circle, taking in the thoughtful touches that made the room feel like theirs rather than a relic of the past. "It's beautiful, Isaac. Everything is perfect." He came to stand behind her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Not quite everything. There's still one more gift I want to give you." From his pocket, he withdrew a small package wrapped in tissue paper. Inside was a delicate gold locket on a fine chain. When Sophia opened it, she found a tiny portrait of a handsome couple, Isaac's parents. "They would have loved you," Isaac said, fastening the chain around her neck. "Almost as much as I do." Tears pricked Sophia's eyes. "I wish I could have known them." "In a way, you will. Through the stories I'll tell our children about their grandparents, our children." The words filled Sophia with a warmth that spread through her entire being. From the moment Isaac had found her on that Fort Worth Street corner, everything had been leading to this, not just a marriage, but the creation of a family, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. "I love you," she whispered, turning to face her husband. "For the medicine, for Thomas's future, for this home, for everything." Isaac smiled, drawing her into his arms. "I'm the one who should be grateful. You've brought life back to this house and to me." He touched the locket at her throat. "My mother used to say that true wealth isn't measured in cattle or land, but in love freely given and received." "Then we're the richest people in Texas," Sophia replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. As snow fell softly outside their window, Sophia and Isaac Prescott began their life together, a life built on an unexpected meeting, an act of kindness, and a love strong enough to overcome every obstacle in its path. 3 years later, on a warm spring day, Sophia sat on the wide front porch of the Rocking P, watching her husband approach from the pasture. In her arms, their 6-month-old daughter, Margaret, dozed peacefully, her tiny hand clutching the locket Sophia still wore every day. From the workshop beside the barn came the sound of hammering. Thomas, now a skilled carpenter with a growing reputation in the county, was completing a commission for a set of dining chairs for one of the prominent families in Fort Worth. As Isaac drew closer, Sophia could see their son, 1-year-old James, perched proudly on the saddle in front of his father. The boy's delighted laughter carried across the yard, bringing a smile to Sophia's face. "Look who wanted to help check the south pasture," Isaac called as he reined in near the porch steps. "I see," Sophia replied, rising carefully so as not to wake Margaret. "And was he a good cowhand?" "The best," Isaac assured her, lifting James down and sending him toddling toward his mother with a gentle pat. "He's got a natural seat on a horse." Isaac dismounted and climbed the steps to join his family, kissing Sophia softly before placing a gentle kiss on his sleeping daughter's forehead. "How are my girls today?" "Wonderful," Sophia said, leaning into his embrace. "Margaret finally slept through the night, and I've had a letter from Laura. Michael's doing well in school and she's thinking of accepting Mr. Collins's proposal." Isaac nodded, pleased at the news. "Good. She deserves happiness after all she's been through." They settled into the porch swing, James climbing into his father's lap while Sophia cradled Margaret. The peaceful moment was one of many they'd shared over the years, each a testament to the life they'd built together. "Do you ever think about it?" Isaac asked suddenly. "That night in Fort Worth," Sophia nodded, knowing exactly what he meant. "Sometimes. It's hard to believe that desperate woman was me, that I was ready to." She trailed off, still unable to speak of it directly even after all this time. Isaac's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I thank God every day that I rode down that street at that moment." "As do I," Sophia said softly, "though I think perhaps it was more than chance. My mother always said God works in mysterious ways. Your mother was a wise woman." Isaac kissed her temple. and she raised a daughter with extraordinary courage. Sophia smiled, thinking of how far they'd come from that first encounter, the wary, desperate woman and the stern rancher who had seen beyond her circumstances to the person she truly was. "I never did pay you back those $10, she mused. Isaac's laugh rumbled deep in his chest. "I'd say you've repaid me 1,000 times over, Mrs. Prescott." As the Texas sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the land in gold and amber, Sophia Prescott counted her blessings: a loving husband, beautiful children, a brother who had found his calling, and a home filled with warmth and purpose. From the depths of despair on a Fort Worth Street corner to the heights of happiness on the rocking P Ranch, it had been an extraordinary journey, one that had started with a simple act of kindness from a cowboy who had offered medicine and hope when she needed it most. And in return, she had given him the greatest gift of all: a heart filled with love, and a family to share the legacy he had worked so hard to build. "I love you, Isaac Prescott," she whispered, as James drifted to sleep in his father's arms and Margaret snuggled closer to her mother's heartbeat. "And I love you, Sophia Prescott," he replied. "Yesterday, today, and all our tomorrows." In that moment, with the ranch spreading out before them and their children sleeping peacefully in their arms, Sophia knew a contentment deeper than any she had ever imagined possible. The medicine that had saved Thomas's life had been just the beginning. The true healing had come in the form of love, a love that had transformed not just her life, but the lives of everyone it touched. It was, she reflected as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the most powerful medicine of all.